Welcome everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 platform community call. It is January 10th, and we are back in a normal schedule, meaning we do have 3 demos scheduled for this week, and for upcoming weeks we'll have at least 2 demos on every single Tuesday call coming from Microsoft, typically Microsoft presenters, from engineering, cloud advocates, and so on. So we did have a pretty relaxed 3 weeks during holiday season. As we didn't want to do actual demos, we did quite a lot of ad hoc Q&A, which actually got a lot of feedback as well. So we might actually do one of those ad hoc Q&As once a quarter, maybe, to have a nice kind of a discussion style setup on Tuesday call as well. But we're trying to get more back on this normal, in quotes, normal Tuesday call mode. Today, we'll have 3 different demos. So first of all, we'll go through the general updates, what has happened, what are the getting started assets. There are some updates over there. We'll talk about that one as we go through. And then there's latest news around the Microsoft blogs, what's in the Microsoft Teams platform. We'll take the together mode picture with all of the attendees who are willing to enable the video. And then we'll have the actual stars of today. We'll start with Maisa and Peter around introduction Microsoft Graph PowerShell v2 preview release, which came out, I think, in the middle of the holiday season, so to say, or just a few days before the main holiday season starting. And then Waldek is going to talk about how to test your SPFx solution respond to throttling with Graph Developer Proxy. So we did have a Sebastian Levert to talk about the Graph Developer Proxy recently within this call, and Waldek is going to just reiterate that and also explain how you can use the Graph Developer Proxy, not just in the, let's say, console applications or in single page applications, also with SPFx solutions as an example. And then I will do a quick intro on AC. Andrew Connell from Voitanos is going to show you a really nice a tutorial, part of our new introduction to Viva Connection ACE development module. We're going to talk about that module, where it is, what does it contain as part of that intro as well. For the upcoming 3 weeks, we'll cover actually those 3 exercises together with AC within the call. Because it's really cool to have a nice ACE dedicated module available as well. Now, let's first get started with a typical set of slides. First of all, you might have seen this slide in the past. We used to have 2 different YouTube channels. Now we are consolidating to a single YouTube channel where we have all of the latest, greatest and latest videos related on Microsoft 365 available, and that is AKMS M365 videos. We might actually change some of those AKMS addresses at some point, but again, all of the old addresses will work as well. So it doesn't really matter which address you use to or are used to call. Old AKMS addresses will be redirected properly to the right channel as well. There might be some changes of the name at some point as well, but it is a one centralized location for all of the Microsoft 365 platform and development topic. Well, not only on developer topics as well, because there's Microsoft lists and there's a lot of other stuff in that channel as well. We do have a lot of open source assets available for you to take advantage in multiple GitHub organizations, but as it might be a bit difficult to find the relevant sample for you because there are hundreds and thousands of samples within a GitHub, we luckily have a set of sample galleries for you, and the primary sample gallery is the AKMS M365 samples, where we have all of the awesome samples available from the different GitHub organizations, from Microsoft and also from the community. So we're really trying to surface and make it a one centralized location to find what's relevant for you. And if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily there's only one, which is AKMS M365 community. And that's going to be the landing page for Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community. And from there, you'll have access on all of the different additional locations where we have other things available. Now, we do have also quite a lot of different developer community calls. This is the Tuesday one, which is happening every single week, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, where we cover the latest from Microsoft side. So we'll have always Microsoft presenters in this call. And then we have the Microsoft Identity, Office Add-ons, and Power Platform monthly community calls. And then our Thursday series, which is happening at 7 a.m. every single Thursday, which is either the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or Viva Connection and SharePoint Framework community call. The Thursday series is more for community demos, and that is a key point for all of the people in this call as well, because we do welcome community demos. So we would love to get you volunteered to show what you have built. So if you have built a cool sample, it doesn't have to be open sourced, but it shouldn't be a product either. So something what you have built, something that you have learned, we would really love to have you sign up for doing a live demo within these community calls. And depending on what the demo or the solution contains, we'll then associate that demo to the right community call. So we do have quite a few of those calls where we actually take community contributions and community demos, which are available. So please sign up using that form, which you can see there. And then as part of that form, we're asking what is the demo all about, and we'll ask all of the details. And then that basically gives us the insights on where we're going to schedule that in our pipeline. Now, other than that, you can contribute in GitHub or you can provide feedback, which is super important. Providing feedback, we have multiple different channels. So we have the feedback portals, we have the Q&A, we have even the chat in here is a great way of providing feedback. So if something doesn't work, please let us know. We're building the experiences in Microsoft 365 for you. So we really, really, really want to know what works and what doesn't. Now, we do have these assets available for you to get started on the Microsoft 365 development. So first of all, sign up for the developer program. You get a free E5 developer tenant, which will renew automatically in every single 90 days, if I remember correctly the timeline. And then we do have a lot of awesome training material available for you to follow up on learning how do you extend the Microsoft 365 across the whole stack. So take advantage of these free assets within your work. Now, we also have two different podcasts available. So we do have the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast available. And today there was a great partner showcase episode released, which was integrating Yasoon with Microsoft 365 with Tobias Jehweger. And that was with Jeremy Fake and Aika Bash, where they talked about the learnings of that partner integration. On the PMP Weekly, which is happening, surprise, surprise, every single week, unless there's a holiday break, we had Albert Jan Scott from Bliss Ticket Digital, and we talked about the low code and no code and what does the fusion development actually means nowadays. So what is the future, and is there a partner opportunities with that as well? So it's a really nice discussion with Abby on that. Now, on the sample galleries, we kind of mentioned them already. We also always want to promote our primary Microsoft 365 unified sample gallery. We do have now 1,450 samples from that gallery from Microsoft and from community, and we are all the time adding new content available, so you can easily follow up on the latest and greatest samples. And there are really great ways of finding, for example, samples which one person has contributed. So there's a lot of cool stuff available there. As you then find a sample, you might be wondering, okay, so now I'm in GitHub and here's the sample, what now? We luckily got you covered. So David Warner is going to talk about our Sharing is Caring initiative.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vesa. Well, friends, if you are amazed by those samples, you may be thinking, where'd they come from? Well, amazing contributors like yourself. Now, you may think, I do have amazing samples I want to share. I just don't know how. These programs, Sharing is Caring, provides you hands-on guidance in a safe space opportunity. That means that you can join members of the community, MVPs, Microsoft employees, and we're going to work together to accomplish just that. So you'll join a session, for example, and we'll do a pull request together. So you walk through, answer any and all questions, ask any and all questions, help each other. These sessions are not recorded, so they are safe space, and they cover a plethora of topics. We have our Power Platform Samples contributor, in fact, coming up today. We have our general first-time contributor coming up later this week. We have more coming up next week in January, and we're getting more scheduled out in February. So there is no cost to join. It is absolutely free, safe space, great time to collaborate, opportunities as we're getting into the new year. aka.ms/sharingiscaring. Don't hesitate to sign up. Reach out if you have any questions, and we would love to collaborate more and empower you to do more in your community. Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David, on that one. Now, on the news side, it's still pretty quiet, so we haven't actually seen that many news within this week or the previous week, but last week we announced the new Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy preview version 3.0.3 with a support for all APIs, and this is really cool. So you don't actually have to just mimic or use the Graph proxy for Microsoft Graph APIs. You can actually use it, for example, if you're hitting a SharePoint APIs and SharePoint REST APIs and CSAM APIs, which quite often, unfortunately, still is required for some of the elements, for example, in SharePoint. Related on that, however, today we announced a public preview on SharePoint Pages Microsoft Graph API. So that is now available for you to take advantage. That was just announced 1.5 hours ago. You'll find it from the Twitter as well. And this is from AKMS M365 Dev blogs, and that's where those are available. On the Viva blog, there was a note related on New Year, new rituals with Microsoft Viva Insights, which is actually gathering some of the old news and old announcements from the previous months related on 2023 goals for individuals. Other than that, we did not have new news in the blogs, but I'm pretty sure that next time there's a lot new to cover. Now, let's do a quick recap also on what's the team's platform updates from a documentation perspective, and Surbhi is going to cover that today.
Thank you, Vesa. Firstly, wish you all a very happy new year. We have a quick update today. We've published a doc on frequently asked questions in collaboration with the ecosystem PMs to address top partner asks and help improve platform adoption. If you have queries that you seem fit to be covered in this document, please do let us know through the feedback feature. So this is what we had for today. If you have any feedback or suggestion, please post on aka.ms Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also follow us on Twitter and configure to the RSS feed to get regular platform updates. Thank you, and over to you, Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you, Surbhi, on that one. And then we'll do the together mode picture. So if you're willing, if you're open for it, you can enable the video. We'll grab a GIF animation out of this and share it in social media. We're not going to take too much time in here. Again, we're trying to get the 50. There are 50 seats in the room. Let's see who's the fastest on the house. I'm not going to actually enable even my camera, so we will leave that one space extra for somebody to join. I'm not yet recording. Let's wait a few more seats, and AC, behave on the middle. And a lot of familiar faces on things. I guess we are maxed out. That might be the 50. Let me put the recording on, and let's do some hand waving, everybody, to welcome 2023 and the community back on business on this weekly community calls. Awesome to have you here. A lot of familiar faces on the call. Excellent, brilliant, and Todd, I can see great dancing on the background. Awesome. Excellent. We'll craft a GIF animation out of that and share it in the social media. Thank you for that. But then we'll move to the actual stars of today, and we're pretty much on the schedule. This is really, really good. So we'll start with Maisa, Rissi, and Peter. Then we go to Waldek, and then me and ACE is going to talk about the new ACE module for Viva Connection. But Maisa, I think we'll jump on your screen first.
Yes, you're right. Thank you, Vesa. Hi, everyone. For those who may not know me, I'm Maisa. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft Graph Developer Experience team. And I am responsible for some of our SDKs. And PowerShell, it's one of those. So we are here to talk a little bit about the new preview of PowerShell v2. We have a few changes we did. So here it's pretty much what have changed between V1 and V2 versions. So pretty much now we have dedicated V1 and beta modules. What that means, I will show you in the next slide, but pretty much we have two different modules now. One, Microsoft.Graph, that is targeting V1 endpoint, and now Microsoft.Graph.Beta module that's targeting beta endpoint. This is something that we thought as a really good improvement, because today, like, it's pretty much easy to use V1 and beta commandlets in the same script. And when you are scrolling down the script, today we need to change the profile when we are targeting V1 or beta, and because of that, it's easy to miss that you are changing profiles, and maybe you are not relying as much as possible in V1 as you should, because as we know, beta endpoints sometimes can introduce breaking chains. So we decided to split the SDK into two, so to be less error prone and less ambiguous scripts, because now we have the beta prefix in all beta commandlets. The other change is that we are supporting more auth scenarios. So we are now putting managed identity, client secret credentials, and environment variables. So manage identity, as some of you may know, like it's a common challenge when writing and automating the things you need. It's a common challenge to manage the secrets, credentials, and all of that, and like have everything you need secure. So now we are eliminating the need to manage your credentials by yourself by using the managed identity, because now Azure resources, we can get access tokens from Azure resources that are protected by Azure Active Directory. So more secure auth scenarios. Same for client secret credentials, because like if you need interactions in the background, you don't have a user to sign in, you can use now client secret credentials. And for those who may need to use environment variables, or you want to, you can now set your variables pointing the client ID, the tenant ID, and ask PowerShell SDK to use these environment variables to authenticate against Graph. Another improvement about auth is for the certificates, because we do now support certificate authentication, but before V2, so in V1, we only were looking at the machine certificate store, but now we included the current user certificate store. So both are being looked by the V2 version. And if we have like the same certificate in both current user and the local machine, we are going to use the current user one. And the other chains are HTTP2 support when the API supports HTTP2. And we added also the success range code support. So now everything that it's 200 something, we are going to be able to get this, even though the API is saying, for example, the response will be a 202, but actually they are also responding with like 201, 200. That's not an issue anymore, because like now we supported the success range code support. So 200, like 2x code are being fully supported by the SDK, and we no longer have issues with that. So just to exemplify what I told about different modules, so in V1, for you to use V1 and beta in the same commandlet, you would need to change your profile, so the select MD profile, to V1 to use what was in V1, and for beta for the things that are in beta. And now in V2 we have the beta prefix. So as you can see in the V2 code snippet here, we have the get mg beta drive activity. So this beta word was included as part of the beta module. So for those who are using only V1 endpoints, nothing had changed. Your script should be working just fine. You probably don't need to change anything. For those who are relying on beta, either because the functionality you need is not exposed in V1, or you're trying something new, some preview APIs, you just need to go and just add this little word beta after MD, and you should be fine. The new auth scenarios here are the snippets, just for you to have a quick view. So manage identity, we have now a dash identity parameter here. For environment variables, as you can see here, we are using environment variables to say the client ID, the tenant ID, and the client secret. And the third one is the client secret one. As you can see, dash client secret credentials parameter are now one of the ways you can authenticate against Graph. So now I'm going to hand it over to Peter, who is going to do a quick demo for us just to show you how it's working the PowerShell preview V2.
All right, thanks, Maisa. Cool. So for this demo, I'll show you how you can use the module in Azure Cloud Shell using managed identity. Let me share my screen here. So the first thing when using managed identity, we support essentially two kinds of identities. We have system assigned and user assigned. So system assigned will automatically use the managed identity of that service instance that you're running on in Azure. So like in this case, I'm using Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell ships with its own identity. So in V2, all you need to do is in your Cloud Shell environment, just run install module, Microsoft Graph, allow pre-release. So it'll be something like this, and this will install the preview version of V1. If you wanted to install beta, you could also just do here.beta, and that should install it. The cool thing with Azure Cloud Shell is that everything is persisted. So even if you close your browser and open it again, the module will be installed. So to use the system assigned identity, I'll just call connect mggraph.identity, and that will pick the access token from that environment. And just like that, I've logged in. And in this case, I'm using app-only permissions. So there are some default permissions that the identity has. So the next thing is, I can just use the module as usual. So like in my next sample, I'll essentially just, filter users in my tenant with a city specified as Redmond. So in this case, I'll get like a collection back of Redmond-based users who have their city specified as Redmond. Then the next thing that I'll do, I'll create a group, M365 group for these users. So in this case, I'm just specifying the display name using the new mg group command as Redmond-based users. Description, mail nickname, group type, and I'll say that this group is mail enabled, and then I'll set security enabled to false. Run it. And just like that, I have a dedicated Redmond group here that's been created. So what I'll do next is I'll iterate through those Redmond-based users and add them to this Redmond group that I created. To do that, I'll just use the new group member command that ships with the SDK. There we go. So in this case, I'll just loop through the users, call the new mg group member, specifying the group ID as that group that I just created up there. And then the directory object ID is the ID of those users who I want to add. Now, why it's a directory object here, it's because a member of a user is any type of that derives from a directory object. So, that can be a user, a group, and other different types. So I'll just loop through. And just like that, we've added users to our groups. So I can confirm this by calling the getMG group member by specifying the group ID as that Redmond group that I just created. And just like that, I can see that all the IDs that I added are available as members of this group. So once I'm done with my group, and I can add other, settings for this group, etc., and you can even convert the group to a team and do a lot more sophisticated work from using the module. But in this case, I just want to keep it simple. So I'm done with my group. What I'll do next is just go and delete it. And one cool thing, you can also call the module with the dash debug to see what's happening. And just like that, we can see that we sent a request to that URL, and those were the headers, and that was the response that we got back, and the group has been deleted. Yeah, so this just shows you how you can use, for instance, that new managed identity as an auth option that we just added for you to essentially make app-only calls without worrying about certificate secrets and certificate rotations and those kind of stuff. Together with this, there's a whole lot more improvements that we've made. You can find those in our migration guide here. So we talk about what are the new features and improvements that we've added, how you can use them when providing snippets as to how they can be used, etc. So I'd urge you to just go to this upgrade guide and see what's new, play with them, and give us feedback.
And just to add on top of what Peter was saying, we are looking for feedback. So please feel free to raise issues or to go to the discussion topic we have in the PowerShell GitHub repo that we are discussing pretty much why we separate the SDK and why we opt per different commandlet names. So please go put your input there. We want to hear from you what you think. And we pretty much want to also tell you and let you know that we are working in a migration tool to help you migrate your scripts from V1 to V2. So this will be available with the GA version. So it's still in progress, but that's also something that we are working on, and also want support. So that's what's coming next. That's all. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Maisa. Thank you, Peter. Really awesome stuff, and good to see the improvement as well. Absolutely brilliant. Now let's jump then on Waldek's table. We're going to talk about Graph Proxy. Right, Waldek?
Yes, we will. The most important question of the day, can you see my screen? You should be seeing
yes, we can.
Browser window with the SharePoint Workbench and VS Code in the background. Yes?
Yep.
Excellent.
We see them both.
All right. Can I have a quick raise of hands who has never had a single API error when calling Graph, SharePoint API? Anything counts. Throttling 500 errors. Fabian had no errors. AC no errors. I believe you guys have never been building anything. I see you there. Excellent. Cool. So basically, when you build apps, right, that connect to Microsoft Graph or other APIs, once in a while you will run into errors like throttling, 500 errors, and these things are really hard to deal with. Why? Because they are ephemeral. Like they appear and then they're gone, and it's impossible for you to repro them, right? At least it wasn't possible until now, right? Because now we have the Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy that allows you to simulate these errors both on Microsoft Graph, but also on any other API that you might use. And in this example, I'm going to actually show you both, right? So right now, I'm going to walk you through a simple app, really a web part that you can see now on a screen that shows the title of the current site using SharePoint REST API, and then uses Graph Me endpoint to show info about the user that is currently authenticated, right? And how would that work? And how would the web part behave like if it ran into throttling or other errors? Okay, so on the screen, you see the web part that shows two things, the title of the site and info about me. The way it's built is really simple. It doesn't get any easier than that, right? So in SharePoint Framework 1.16.1, I can use the Microsoft Graph JavaScript SDK v3. And basically from there, I get a client. I don't need to do any auth. I get all of that already for free from SPFx. And I do a simple call to endpoint me to get info about me. And I show that on a page. So this is this block, which you see here. Then on top, I show the title of the site. And I do that by calling the SharePoint REST endpoint in here. I call web. And from that, I get a title. And I show this on a page. Like it all works. It doesn't get any easier than that, right? So it works, right? Like you can ship that production, right? How would the web part work like if it would run into throttling? So let's test that. Let me start the Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy, and I want to only test the 429s, too many errors. Every error is one too many. Too many requests error, right? And I don't want to do any mocks, and I want to be quite certain that I will see errors, right? Because like that's what we are here for. So let me do that. Let me start it, and then it's available now. and then let me start new window of Chrome to which I can attach a proxy, right? Because if I were to do that with Edge, I would need to enable it on my OS, which would mean you wouldn't be able to see anything because Teams also needs Graph, right? So that wouldn't make a great demo. Let me see. Where is my window? Here's my window. Let me grab the URL. Let me paste it in Chrome. 3, 2, 1. We should be seeing Workbench. Will we actually see anything? And we won't see anything. Why? Because we are already intercepting all requests. And if I refresh that, maybe you will see it again, maybe not. Let me see that. Right, so here are already errors that we intercept and we simulate 429. So the Workbench couldn't load. Well, that doesn't really help us, right? So let me adjust the proxy a little so that it will only simulate the error on the API that we want to use, and we will get back to how we want to, like, what ideas do we have to make it more or easier for you to use. So let me stop it here. Let me get back to the config, and in here we have the list of URLs that we monitor, and here you can see we monitor all SharePoint calls. Well, some of them are needed for the Workbench to work. So in this case, let me just trim that down to web select, right? So that is basically the call that we do in our code, right? And with that, let me restart the proxy. And I mean, I run a version on which I dev, which is why the config does not reload. But if you grab the version that we already shipped, you will have a hot reload. So if you change anything about it, you will need to restart or stop and restart. Okay. All right. So we're back. Let me reload the Workbench. The get client components comes through. That's perfectly fine. We have another 429, but that is irrelevant for now. And now let's add the web part to our page. Okay. So this is the web part that we have. 3, 2, 1. Are we getting 429s? Perfect. So we're getting a 429 on me. And perfectly fine, right? So this came through eventually. And here we can see in the Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy that there was a request, right? We failed it with a 429, but the Microsoft Graph JavaScript SDK handles 429s for you. So in other words, in our code, if we get back to here, this is the only thing we need to do anything more. This just works because that SDK handles 429s for us. So we need to do anything else. What about this call, right? So what about the SPHTTP client that we use to get the title of the site from the REST API, right? That came through, and I really want to see this fail. So let me reload again. And we will stay here until it will fail. There we go. It failed. It failed. We can see here. So we've got our 429 on retrieving the title of the site, undefined, the code failed, and we will not recover. Why? Because SPHTTP client doesn't handle 429s on or any other errors, right? It wraps fetch with auth so that you don't need to authenticate. But other than that, you're on your own. So what would be a reasonable way for you to go about it? Well, you basically have two ways. One way is for you to kind of build something by yourself and basically like imagine that like here is a call that is built with fetch. SPHTTP client wraps fetch, so it's almost the same. So to add support for 429s to this, well, your fetch code would need to become something like this, right? Where you add a sleep so that you can back off for the period of time communicated by the retry after a header, and then you need to like try again until the call will come through, right? So suddenly your call now becomes a bigger call, and you need to kind of centralize it, think around it, and so forth and so on, right? Or there's another way. You can also use PNP.js, which is an SDK that calls an API, and it can call Graph, it can call SPREST, HISAM, and so forth and so on, and it handles 429s for you, so you don't need to do anything. So let me quickly uncomment what I need and comment what I don't need. I've got this call using PNP.js to the exactly the same call, right? So here is web select title. So let me do that. Let me save it. 321 is going to rebuild, recompile, reserve. Meanwhile, let me already move to Chrome. It's this one. We are on TSC 321. Webpack. Okay, we're there. Okay. Refresh. will the request come through? Well, it does come through, but there's one thing that is odd, right? So here we've got not a $sign, but a dollar is escape, right? So it's a %24, meaning proxy will always pass it through, right? Because we've adjusted that. So let me quickly get back, adjust proxies config, and also make it, okay, I want to do two things. I want to do this, and I want to do %24, save it. Let me quickly restart. 3, 2, 1. We are back in Chrome. Let me see. And now we want to see the call to the title of the site fail. Okay, so it failed here. There you go. It failed. But there you go. So we have it initially because, again, as I said, PNP.js handles 4 to 9s for you, so that and you don't need to do anything with that, right? So in your code, all you do is you get a title of a site, and there's no handling errors. Like all of that is already available to you for free. Right, and here you can see the first call failed, right? We get a 4 to 9, and that's coming from a proxy, right? Like we modeled this error, but then there's another call, and that comes through, and as you can see here, we get the title of the site. So the cool thing is, right, with that, you have now the ability to test all of that, something that you couldn't do in the past unless like you would spin up your own mock service with your own dummy data and all of that, change your code to call one endpoint versus the other. Now you don't need to change anything about your code. You can keep your code as is and simulate how it will work in production when it's under heavy load, when it's used by thousands of folks in production. You can check that already on your tenant of 1 that everything will be fine when you ship your code to production. So with that, I think I am right on time to pass it to the to AC and Vesa.
Thank you, Waldek, on that one. Really, really cool stuff, and a great demo as well, walking through the wheel. And doing always, even commenting on live demos is risky. So, but it all turned out fine. So really, really cool.
This time
cool implementation. Exactly. Now we're going to talk about a bit about the new introduction of Viva Connection ACE module. So let's start with that announcement. So, starting today, and we'll have a blog post coming up actually tomorrow. We have a new Microsoft Viva learning path or learning module, which is focusing on the ACE development. And this is basically building a SharePoint framework powered adaptive card extensions for Microsoft Viva Home and Viva Connection. And I'll talk a bit about what is Microsoft Viva Home and Viva Connection in a second, because Viva Home is going to be starting to roll out quite soon worldwide. So that is a great opportunity of building extensibility for Microsoft 365, and then from those ACEs, you're actually redirected, for example, to Microsoft Teams applications or any other sources. But in this particular case, the Learn module really focuses on ACE development. So how do we build those ACEs? What are the different options on these adaptive card extensions? What is the relationship between a SharePoint framework component and SharePoint framework code and adaptive card technology? SharePoint framework is basically the orchestrator behind the scenes for ACEs and hitting the API and then feeding the API information for adaptive cards, which are then rendering the UX out. As part of this module, there is, thank you AC for correcting, it is a Learn module. As part of this module, there's 3 distinct exercises from getting started to more complex scenarios. And also this includes the usage of media selection location capabilities in ACE. So we kind of cover the latest and greatest on the ACE development as well. It's both available in both written and in video format. So it's up to you how do you actually follow up on the guidance. And we'll release actually the videos also in YouTube channel starting tomorrow. It's altogether 1 hour and 52 minutes in both in a written and a video format. And you can get it to AKMS Viva ACE Learn is the URL and which is happening there. So again, HTTPS AKMS/Viva/ACE/Learn is the location, how to get there. Now, this is all based on SharePoint Framework development. SharePoint Framework was originally released already in 2017, and it's not just about SharePoint. You can actually build for Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, and nowadays also for Outlook on Microsoft 365 apps. So the same piece of code actually can be running across all of the technology stack. Technically, however, the ACEs are card specific, and the ACEs are then rendered either in the Microsoft Viva Home, which is the one on the left side, or in the Viva Connection, which you can see on the right side. So there's a bit of a difference on the Viva Home and Viva Connection. There's going to be more information on the Viva Home rollout and capabilities and options in the future. But as you can see in the Viva Home on the left side or in the mobile views, they are ACE cards. They are ACE components. They're adaptive card components which are being rendered in that kind of a card format. And this learning path really focuses on, okay, what are these cards? How can I modify them? How they are being exposed? What are the different options? And how would I use them? For example, location information and media upload information in a mobile device view, because these are really designed for mobile first experience. They of course work really well in a desktop, but the main target here is the mobile first. I'm, for example, personally using Viva Home and Viva cards on a daily basis within my mobile. It's the easiest way to access information and some of the services. But to be able to understand how do we get started on building these ACEs, I will actually turn the audience and turn the microphone to Andrew Connell, who's going to do the first exercise on this learning module, and we're going to continue these exercises in upcoming weeks as well. And AC, we can see the screen. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vesa. Yeah, so I want to just run through the first demo for this, but that we have in this, or the first lab exercise / demo that we have in this module. Before I go in there, though, I just want to talk a little bit about the module itself, just to add on a little bit about what Vesa just talked about. This is a new Microsoft Learning module, which consists of like lectures and hands-on lab exercises. What I'm doing is the first hands-on lab exercise that we have in this module. So just real quick, this is just who I am, Andrew Connell. You can see well, there you go, look at that at the very bottom. Classic CSS problem. That's exactly why I don't do design and stick with the development stuff. So I'm a Microsoft MVP, specifically around Office development. I've been doing SharePoint for, actually this year, it's 20 years. So I don't recommend that. But doing anything for 20 some years is a long time. Anyway, so let's go into the module. So what this module is called Creating Adaptive Card Extensions with the SharePoint Framework. Got all my keywords in there. There's a link to where you can find it as well. The link that Vesa just showed a second ago is also there. That is also on the slides. That's also been shared. One thing too, just to highlight here, if you want to see the videos for this, if you want to see like the download for the code and the samples for this, all this stuff is available right now. You can get to it. The videos haven't been like made public or publicized or anything like that, but they're all still there. They're all still there. They're all publicly available. They're just not like indexed. So if you know YouTube, it's basically all the videos are there, but they're just all listed as unlisted right now until they're kind of released out. If you go to the intro section of this module that I'm linked to right here, you'll be able to see a link at the bottom of the intro module. One points to a GitHub repo that contains the slides that go along with the module. I'm not going through those. And then it also contains, I'm not going through those in this demo today. And it also has a link to the screencast that's on YouTube that consists of all of the parts of this module if you want to do that stuff. All right, I'm going to get out of PowerPoint because we're going to do some real work here. Let me kind of first show you what this thing does. And it's a very simple example. Keep in mind, this is a demo. It's made for people trying to learn how this stuff works. So let me go ahead and run this thing first. All this is an adaptive card extension that demonstrates how to read and write to a SharePoint list. Ignore all the yellow stuff. Those are just warnings. We don't care about those as developers. I'm going to come over here and open up my workbench in my test site here. So that's just _layout/workbench.aspx. And I'm going to go ahead and add my my card, my ACE to my page. So here's on my page, you see it says I'm missing a list ID. The reason for that is because we're going to show read and write data to a SharePoint list. So if we're going to do that, I got to have a SharePoint list. So let me go back over to my list. I'm going to go to my ACE data list, which is going to contain, just like everybody else, I store all the movies that I watch in a SharePoint list. No, not really. That's pretty lame. But it just makes for a more interesting demo. So you can see what our family Christmas movies are that we've been watching over the break recently. So I will paste that in and save my changes. And then I'll come over here and I will flip this from my edit mode over to display mode so I can actually see the content. I will click on the card itself and it'll show me a list of the movies that we've been watching as a family. So Inception, Interstellar, Dead Poet Society, Die Hard, good Christmas movie. And last night we watched the Batman from last year. So anyway, so let's go back. The movie that's on our list tonight is, that we'll add in just a minute. Actually, we're going to add it right now. So I want to add an item. I can go ahead and I can click on add an item. So I can go add an item. So let me go grab the movie that's on deck for tonight. Let me just copy and paste because we'll type this in. And we are watching Fight Club because my daughter is on a school trip out of town, so we don't have to subject her to this or expose her, I guess, to it. And there we go. Oh, wait, a couple more movies: Sixth Sense, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and Fight Club got added. And I come over to my list and I look at the ACE data, and I can see the item that we just added here for Fight Club. So cool. How does all this stuff work? All right, so now I'm going to come back over here to, let's go ahead and close this out and let's take a look at the code for this now that you've seen how this works. So again, if you're not familiar with ACEs, just really briefly, when you click, this is the card view that you get initially, and then all these things that pop up are called quick views. If you click on the card view, you have the option here to display, to do something. And in my case here, I'm displaying a quick view, which is this kind of a display view that I'm just created a carousel to cycle through the items I got back from my SharePoint list. And then the button add item was going to go through and open up a different quick view that I want to use. So if I come over here and look at the code, let's see how this is all set up here. Where's my code? Right here. So everything kind of centers around in an adaptive card extension or an ACE. Everything centers around like a center of gravity, right? And that center of gravity is the adaptive card extension.ts file that's going to be in your project. Now this file here contains a couple things that are interesting that you should pay attention to. So the only things that I think are really like that are really important to pay attention to is that you've got an interface for properties. This works the exact same way as a web part does if you've done anything with the SharePoint Framework web parts, where this is just the definition for all the public signature of your component, or you can store different settings. The state, if you've done anything with React, this is basically the same thing as the state. And what the state is this is going to be a way for you to store name value pairs for your component that are accessible everywhere throughout the component. And that includes in the card views and in the quick view. And whenever you change something in the state, it's going to tell the rendering engine to re-render the card all client side. Now, the next section that's kind of important here is a list of the different IDs. Each one of your cards has to have an ID. So we have card views and quick views. Generally speaking, the card view is not going to be exported because we're only going to use that inside of the center of gravity adaptive card extension. And then in the quick views, the two quick views we have here, these IDs are exported because we're using them from somewhere else. Either, in my case, I'm using one of them from the card view itself, or another one I'm using it from the card view when I click the button. All right. So those are defined, and all that is just a unique string. I could put whatever I want in here to make this work. Like, I mean, I could even just make this, literally just make it whatever I want without any proper spelling. Doesn't matter. But we're not going to test it, so just trust me on that one. Then the next thing I have to do is inside of the on init, I need to use these things called navigators. These view navigators, essentially these are just like arrays, and I have to go through and tell the adaptive card extension rendering engine, hey, these are things that you can use, that we can refer to. And we refer to them based on an ID, and then we give it an object that's going to get instantiated when the view is activated. And then the last thing I'm doing in my initialization is I'm going to go load all of my data. And this code is not how I would write stuff in a production thing, so don't judge me on my code. This is for educational purposes. So I would only call set state once and set the properties on both of them, just trying to be explicit on what we're changing here. In this case, I'm grabbing the title of the list that's selected and the items from the list, provided I have a list ID that's defined, and I'm setting those values. That's how I'm going to be initializing my component on the page. Finally, the last thing that's interesting here is my render card. The other thing that's interesting, what that's going to do is simply tell the ACE engine to which card I want it to display for my adaptive card extension or for my ACE, and that's where I'm passing in the ID. Finally, the last thing I'm doing here is in this class, this is from the property pane, or I'm using this in the property pane. I'm saying, hey, whenever a specific field or property called list ID changes, and provided it has changed with my new value, old value check, then I want to do the same thing I do in initialization. That's why I want to go get some data. So I'm just telling it to go back and do that. Otherwise, clear it out. There's nothing to see here. All right, so now the next piece that's going to get rendered then is that when this thing gets added to the page is my card view. So if I go look at my card view, it's defined in my cardview.ts file. This is going to get instantiated because I had a view navigator that was set. My card view navigator had an ID, had something added to it by its ID, and I passed in an instance of this class. So when my center of gravity class returned back in the rendered method the card view ID, that's how this one's getting registered. This guy's only got 3 things that are interesting. He's got what happens when I click the card itself, not a button on the card, but the card itself. Well, I want to show a quick view. Which one? This one, right? The one that we exported a little bit earlier. Okay, well, what do you want to put on the card? What buttons do you want to put on it? Well, in this case here, I can pass back a button, 2 buttons, or no buttons. And in this case here, I'm saying, well, if there's no list ID defined, well, I can't do anything because I'm not working with the list. So I don't post that. I post back nothing. Otherwise, I'm going to add my add item button that when I click on it, it's going to launch a quick view. Which one? This one. And then finally, my data method. What is that guy going to do? My data method is going to display is simply going to return back an object that is going to get meshed with the card view. And these are some well-known properties on the card view that I can get rendered out. Now, the interesting thing, though, where this comes in, my last few minutes I have here, is to look at my quick view. So the first quick view is when I clicked on the card and I had that thing pop up off to the right that was going to show me a list of all of my my carousel list of all of my items. So how does that work? Well, if I come over here and look at my quick view, what I'm doing here is I'm returning my data. I have the same kind of setup again. So I have my data. I have my template, which is going to define where's the adaptive card. Where's the JSON that defines the adaptive card? And I'm saying it's right there. So you can see that in the project. We're not going to go look at JSON right now, but that card, that JSON is defining the structure for my card. And it has little callouts or placeholders for where I want to inject data elements to it. What data elements? Well, the ones that I'm returning back in my data method here. So my data method or my data accessor method, what I'm doing here is I'm passing back all of the items that I get back from the SharePoint list item. And I'm also passing back 2 properties here, one called previous enabled and one called next enabled, because those are my 2 little toggles I have on either side of the item. And if I'm at the beginning of the array, I don't want to have a previous. If I'm at the end of the array, I don't want to have a next. And I know I could put some like kind of loop around kind of a thing, but I'm trying to keep it simple and it's a demo. So that here, I'm just checking to see, am I on the current item? Is the very first item in the list, is that the one that I'm on? Or am I on the very last item of the list? And that's just going to be setting those 2 properties. And in my JSON for the adaptive card, that's got a visibility property set to true or false. That's going to define if something's going to show up or not. The next thing that I'm going to do, so when I go, and then the other thing that's interesting about this, I will show you one piece to this. I'm going to lie a little bit here, is that my buttons that I'm using to display stuff. So my previous button that has this, the chevrons pointing to the left side versus the chevrons pointing to the right side. I've got a selected action here that says that my type is a submit and my ID is going to be an integer. So in this case here, in previous, I want to go back 1, so -1. Whereas I'm going to use on the plus when I go next, I want to go +1. So what I'm doing is inside, when someone clicks one of those buttons, that's going to trigger my on action. I'm going to check and see, is it a submit? And if it isn't, then get out of here. Otherwise, go get the current index that we're on, and then just take that index and increment it by whatever the value of the ID is. And I might be incrementing it by -1 to go back in the index to show me which one's there. So what does that do? That's going to go back and change the index. That's going to cause a re-rendering. That's going to change the item that's going to be displayed inside of my quick view. But then last but not least, what happens when I click the add item button? Well, that's going to launch the quick view called new item quick view. And what this guy does, he's got his JSON set up where I've just got title and description set up, and then the whole submit button as well set up. If I look at the new item quick view for this one, this guy works basically the same way, but what's interesting about him is in his on action, he's checking to do if the action is a submit action. And if it is, then I want to go save the item. So the way I'm going to save the item is there's an asynchronous method, and because the on action is not asynchronous, it's returning a void, so you can't just do a special async on here, and nobody wants to play with promises. So what I ended up doing was I just wrapped it up in an IFI, and so I made that IFI asynchronous, and so that's how I'm doing an asynchronous thing inside of a synchronous statement, as synchronous as JavaScript can really be. And so here I'm saying go add an item, which is coming from some service that I created here. This is not a demo on working with the SharePoint REST API. So that's all that service contains all that code on reading and writing to the list. So here I'm going to pass back things like the context, the list ID, and then the properties for the item I'm going to save. And then once I've saved the item, well, then let's go back and let's go get all those items and refresh our array so that now when I go back and click on the card view again, it's going to show me those items being displayed. And then finally, I want to remove it from the quick view. In this case, this is a cool thing about these navigators is we have a way to like push and pop stuff off the stack. In this case, I'm popping it off the stack. Well, since there was nothing else on the view stack for my quick view, popping it's going to basically close the quick view. But I could have just as easily said close right here, and this would have closed the quick view as well and had the same effect in this case. However, you're going to see in the next 2 weeks, unfortunately, you got to deal with me again for the next 2 weeks, because next week I'm going to show you another demo from the second exercise from the same module that shows how to do work with a image card view and how we're going to be fetching data from an external service, something that everybody should be familiar with, one of the NASA open APIs to show images from a Mars rover. And then the last demo is much more involved on working with the Viva Connections actions for showing and getting locations using the Bing Maps control that's available to us. So if you're interested in seeing those, join me again, same time, same place next week, or same time, same place in 2 weeks. So that's it. That's all I got.
Excellent.
Maisa.
Yep, thank you, AC. There's nothing unfortunate for you to actually do the demos in this call in upcoming weeks, just to correct on that. Now, thank you, Maisa, thank you, Peter, thank you, Waldek, thank you, AC, for the demos today. A bit busy call. We're just about to running out of time. The recording will be available in 24 hours at the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel, AKMS M365 community videos. Subscribe today so you will know whenever the videos there's new are released. We do release new video at least one new video every single business day. Typically, there's multiple ones in every single day, which is pretty cool. New content on the Microsoft 365 coming up all the time. The next community call, platform community call, happens on January 17th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So again, Tuesday next week. All of the community calls at AKMS, M Community and Calls. But thank you for this one. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you for the presenters. Keep the feedback coming. Lovely to have an active discussion in the chat as well. And have a great rest of the week. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.